It's just like I started to realize I didn't realize I was depressed. I knew something was up. I was unhappy. I hated myself. And my career success was going really good, and I had the career um, stature, right? But I was deeply miserable. And that is where like that journey began because like I was burnt out. I was depressed. I didn't know it at the time, but I was. And I knew something had to be done.
What's up, everybody? Did you miss me? I hope so. That means you've been watching videos and you've known that I took 2 weeks off. We were in San Diego doing a speaking event for LEADR, who we'll talk about here shortly in this intro. But welcome back to It's a Matter of Speaking, a podcast for leading voices in the industries of health, wealth, and relationships. People that have a mastery in their mind, a message in their heart, whichever way we want to put it, and they took the uncomfortable step to get it out there and what they've done with it since. We want to reach people that have their own mastery and message, and you're looking to get outside your comfort zone, or you have, and you're looking for like-minded people to just listen to and learn from. Not these crazy big professionals that we just feel like we can't be there yet. People that are in the journey and starting to have successes so you can understand what that early part of the journey is like. We hope it reaches you. We hope it motivates you. And if it is, let us know. Make sure you drop a like. Make sure you subscribe to this. It's how we grow our brand and our message so we can continue to interview people like this. Today, we speak with Elton Silvi, one of our clients in our business accelerator program. We talk about spirituality and AI, which was an interesting topic. A little bit about Elton. Elton Silvi is a mental health sensei, and he's on a mission to let people know the journey that begins from within to answer the questions to freedom, specifically in your career, specifically in a career that you feel burnt out on. He's a career coach who spent nearly a decade in the corporate world. Now he focuses on helping others break free from burnout through career fulfillment in an AI-driven world. We talk about what I personally don't like about AI. He really helped me see it a little bit different. He talks about how before we go into AI, we need to really look within ourselves. That way we know how to use this tool for the best benefit to us. We talk about leading voice being a vision. We talk about the importance of setting reminders, whether to yourself on your mission or whether to your future self and what you feel you're capable of. My hopes is after you watch this video, you write a letter to yourself or you film a video to your future self to let yourself know what you're capable of. And you'd be shocked at what you find when you watch it or read it. So we're going to dive in. I like to keep these short, but before we do, a message from our sponsor. Our sponsor is, believe it or not, LEADR. Yes, it's had a couple of name changes, but its mission has been the same through and through. Help people get their authentic message out to the world through the power of speaking and program building. We teach you the business of everything, the business of speaking, the business of building an offer, the business of coaching and consulting. LEADR has now helped 650, a little over 650. I actually think it's over 700 people now land TEDx talks around the world, and thousands more be able to speak on virtual and physical stages around the world and speak authentically. On top of that, they have a back-end offer with Business Accelerator, Elton's a member of, and Inner Circle to help people build their coaching and consulting business on the back end so they can reach as many people and impact as many people as possible. If you have this message in your heart, if you have this mastery in your mind, if you dig the personalities that you're seeing before you as you watch these podcasts, and you just want to learn more about what we do, there's a link in the description below. If not, just be entertained with my interview with Elton. But before we dive into today's podcast, a quick word from our sponsors. This podcast is sponsored by LEADR.co. For the last 7-8 years now, LEADR.co has perfected the art of delivering a top-tier message to the world and building an authentic yet scalable offer on the back end. They've had over 700 people now land TEDx talks worldwide, and thousands more speaking on platforms, virtual and physical, around the world. They also offer a program to help you build an authentic yet scalable offer program on the back end that you can sell for $2,000 to $10,000 to help other people with your mastery. If you have a message in your heart, mastery in your mind, you want to learn about what all of our podcast guests have went through themselves, there's a link in the description below, free webinar that you can watch out, our website so you can see what we're all about. Feel free to comment and ask questions. Make sure you're liking, make sure you're subscribing. It's how we grow this channel. We really appreciate you. Now, over to me. All right, everybody. Welcome back to It's a Matter of Speaking, a podcast for leading voices in industries such as health, such as wealth, such as relationships. Today, probably a little bit of all of them. We're going to lean a little bit towards health, mental health, avoiding burnout. We're chatting with one of LEADR's Business Accelerator clients, Elton Silvi. Elton, so excited to have you on the show, man.
Thank you, Dylan. So happy to be here too. I feel like it's a little bit of a graduation in a way.
Yeah, man. Bringing those clients in, starting your business, first kind of business that you're starting on your own, which I'm excited to learn more about.
Mhm.
But really at the heart of it, working with tech professionals, helping them avoid burnout in an increasingly AI-driven world. It is going to be a very interesting topic. I want to start with the question I ask everybody, which with AI being new, you're leaning into the tech world, you're leaning into mental health and burnout, and you're getting your voice out there, man. You have a TikTok now, you're on these podcasts, you're consistently talking about your message, your mastery. You're a leading voice in this new industry, in this new arena. For you, what does it mean to be a leading voice in your arena?
Well, thank you, Dylan, and thank you for the kind words. And the biggest thing I would say here in terms of being a leading voice is vision, right?
Hmm.
That people that do have a leading voice is they have experience, they have knowledge, and in a particular field, and they have a vision towards whatever it is they're talking about,
Hmm.
right? And a deep emphasis on the knowledge and experience there.
Yeah, man, for you, I think vision important, right? And I think it's great to like dig deep and find your vision, find your deep desire. But I also think we live in a world where it's easy to forget it. It's like you could literally write it down, and then society happens, and then you start thinking of like, oh, what am I going to
Mm.
have for dinner? Oh, what do I have to do here? Oh, what about this? And then we get like wrapped up in this machine. What are things that you do regularly to remind yourself of your vision?
Yeah, wow. That's a great question. There's a lot of meditation that happens. I have a whiteboard actually, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I have my vision on it, right? So when I wake up in the morning, it's one of the first things I see,
Mm-hmm.
right? Writing it down. Like, oh, before in my life, I used to have sticky notes all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So now I've like reduced those sticky notes to just a few, right? And one of them is always having that vision there. I have, for example, I have like a Buddha icon,
Mm-hmm.
like a symbol, right? Like it's made from stone, so it's in one of my workstations, right? So every time I see that, I'm like, oh, right, right, that's my vision,
Yeah.
you know.
I call them the three R's. I think having rituals, having routines, or having some type of reminder is so key,
Mm,
or else like you're just gonna forget. Now, you're in business now, but that
mm-hmm.
hasn't always been the case, right? So like the origin story of Elton, like what was it at a young age? What was that passion growing up, and what was the mastery that it initially led to?
When I was growing up, cars,
Huh.
like I loved cars. Yeah, I used to like collect these cars. And it wasn't like necessarily like sports cars too. It'd just be like random cars too. I remember one of my favorite cars was a Daewoo Cielo. I
Hmm.
still remember. I was like 6 or 7 years old. Uh, and so I loved cars. And the other thing too is getting rich.
Always
You
been
know
in like the
when
back of your mind?
yeah, and I didn't know what that meant,
Hmm.
right? So like my friends around me at the time, this is like 6 7 years old, and my friends around me at the time, they're like, hey, I want to be like a firefighter or an astronaut like came to me a little bit later,
Hmm.
because I was like, oh, like I want something that's, I guess, similar,
Yeah.
right? But I was like, I don't know what I want, but I know I want a lot of money.
Hmm.
and and then, yeah, and then that just slowly and surely kept moving
What
from
was it
there.
that you did like before we get to the shift into your business now?
Hmm.
Like what was it that you were doing for like would you go to did you go to college? If so, what
Hmm.
for? What was that first 9 to 5? Like what was the first path you were pursuing to get rich?
Oh, yeah, yeah. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia,
Mhm.
and I came to the U.S. For college, for education, and I came to Penn State University in Pennsylvania, and I came in as a computer engineering student.
Hmm.
Even that too, over there, I was looking at what degrees or what jobs would have the most amount of money in it.
Mhm.
And my brother had gone through like engineering too, in a way, so I was like, oh, or like the science field, so I was
Mhm.
like, oh, I guess I'll do that. Didn't really take the time to think about what I actually wanted. So there I was in college, computer engineering, going through my class, and realizing I did not like it. I didn't like it.
Hmm.
And I remember this so vividly, Dylan. I was sitting in my computer science class, and the teacher just kept talking about how she worked at Google and, all this. And I had this moment where, if you watch Soul, the movie,
Great movie. Great
great movie,
movie.
right?
Shout
Oh,
out Soul.
oh.
Not sponsored by, but maybe one day. Continue.
Right, yeah, there's a scene, the guy, they are able to collect one of the souls, right? The guy's just sitting in, like, like he's like a trader, and then, his soul drops into him. He's like, I'm alive.
Yeah.
It was like that was the moment for me. I was just sitting there, and I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to do this.
Hmm.
And I walked out of class. And then I walked out of class, and I was like, wow, I can't do this. So I ended up switching majors. And at first I was like, I wasn't sure what major to pursue. I was like, oh, maybe I'll go into business. And I remember having a conversation with my parents. And, I have Indian parents, so if you know, like,
Mhm.
we're either supposed to be a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer.
Yeah.
So my mom was like, yo, we did not send you across the Atlantic to do business. So I
Hmm.
was like, okay, I'll do industrial engineering.
Hmm.
And that's what I went towards. And completing that degree, I ended up getting my first 9 to 5,
Doing what? What was it?
and it was uh in tech,
Yeah.
right? So I completed that, and like the official role was the software implementation role,
Yeah.
right? And the biggest thing there too, it was I the only reason I wanted a job was I wanted to stay in the country
Yeah.
somehow, right? So it was like whatever job came first, I'll do it, and that was the one that came. It was in the same city.
Yeah, it's so interesting, right? You're going to school. We are Penn State.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like,
yeah, Penn State. Yeah,
you're
you
like,
know that.
exactly, man. I
Yeah.
grew sport management minor, so I get that there. 'Cause computer science, you're like, no way I can do this. You have that first inclination of business, to which your parents say, fuck no. Then you go into industrial engineering. So you
Mhm.
stick with it. You get the 9 to 5 software implementation. How long did you do that for?
7 years.
Damn, dude. So
7 years.
from what I'm hearing, like the storyteller in me is you had this small spark of business back in college and
Hmm.
quickly kind of like put it in a box, put it to the side. I'll just, stay here in the States, work really hard, do this. What were some of the challenges you started to see in the tech world, in the software world, in regards to burnout? Like, what did you see either with yourself or with your colleagues?
Hmm. Wow. Yeah. And before I forget, I do want to quickly mention, as I started that first job, Dylan. I mean, it was amazing that I got that offer. I got the job, and I was like, wow, I get to stay here. But I made a video. Okay, I made a video that I completely forgot about, and I found it last year. and it was a video of me before my first, like on my first day of work, before going into work, saying that this is just a means to an end. Within 1 or 2 years, I'll come out of it.
Mm.
And it blew my mind that it took me 7 years. So I like that just came to mind. So I wanted to mention that.
Wild, because it's gonna come. I'm curious then what made the shift back to business. But if we stay in that
Yeah.
7 years where you
Mhm.
lied to yourself apparently for 5 of them. No, I'm kidding. You're in there. Like, what do you start to see day to day that you're like, oh my, I don't know,
Yeah.
I'm not going to survive? Or you see the burnout. What are some of the things that you see with yourself or your colleagues?
Yeah. So one of the first things is exhaustion,
Mm-hmm.
and that I see it now. I've seen it there in the industry too. I was exhausted too, and the other piece is an like unintentional living that causes burnout.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, my first year, I was having fun, right? I was in America, graduated, I got the job, I'm here, I'm making money, and it's most amazing money, like money that I never had access to before. So it was amazing. Then the second year onwards, I started to apply like for the work visa, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly but surely, I started like, the like the analogy of like the crab bucket, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I felt myself getting pulled down slowly and surely. But I had this like I had to get the work visa, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I can't go anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
and so this is all it is. And this put me in a waiting period, and I feel like maybe immigrants have this thing of being in a waiting period for sure, but I think generally people have this. It's like, hey, I'm climbing this corporate ladder, right? So while I'm climbing it, I'm gonna wait here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna wait, and I'm gonna wait for others to recognize me. I'm gonna wait for others to give me a promotion, and I'll just like hang tight.
I imagine it then makes it harder because I'm sure a lot of them slowly make, I mean, the rungs of a corporate ladder, I feel like, are infinite, but you slowly start making your way up this ladder. And then it's like, well, I'm not going to leave if I'm 5 rungs higher than when I started.
Mm,
What was it for you, though? Because you're in corporate America, it's helping you with the work visa. You're able to like stay and slowly work your way up, and you have the pressure from family of like, yeah, this is what we go into. What was the like? Do you remember that shining moment where you're like, you know what, you're in business accelerator now at Leader? What was that moment where you're like, no, I am going into business?
yeah, and there are a couple of moments
Mm-hmm.
actually. So to go a little bit in the past to
Mm-hmm.
give some context here. So, initially we talked about how I wanted to do business and then I was like, fuck no, right? I
Mm-hmm.
went into industrial engineering. But I ended up pursuing a minor, and that minor was in engineering entrepreneurship.
Hmm.
And that was the taste, the true taste of entrepreneurship. And I was like, wow, I like it. I love it actually. Right. And then, right. So now fast forwarding, I'm working 3 years in, and so the student visa gives international students 3 years to work.
Mm-hmm.
Then after 3 years, you can apply for the work visa,
Mm-hmm.
which is that H-1B visa, which is like lottery based.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 years in, I get the lottery. People at that point told me, if you get in the lottery, Elton, you're good. You don't like you are here.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that advice, because the first time I didn't get picked in the lottery, so taking that advice, I was like, wow, I'm here, I'm settled. Got a new car, got a cat. Her name was Fergie, with a U, Fergie. Right? And
Oh man,
I did
continue.
all this. Yeah, I did all that, right? And I get denied.
Mm.
I get denied, Dylan, and my world shattered, right? Because now I have to leave my 7 year life that I created in Pennsylvania in US, and I have to leave it in about 3 months. And I do it, right? I'm like, okay, I mean I have to, right? And that was the first sense of like, okay, this didn't work.
Mm.
Here I am, so I'm gonna go back to India where I never really lived, right? So
Mhm.
I've gone there for vacation and stuff. So it was my first time living there. So I was like kind of going in that patriotic mindset of yes, I'm going to bring change over there. I'm going to start a business, right? So I go there, and the environment completely fucks me up. Luckily, in about 2 months, I get a job. I get a job
Mhm.
at a startup, and then I realize I'm way more miserable.
Hmm.
And within 3 months, I tell them, I'm like, hey, I have something working out in Canada, so I'm just gonna quit. But I didn't have anything. I just had an application,
Liar.
and that was it. Yeah, I lied
Hey, it
to
works.
save my
It got you here.
sanity.
So then what do you go to
Yep.
Canada or?
So then, not yet, because I was like, okay, I guess I gotta start applying, right? And I had I had about 6 months where I was just like kind of at home. I was just bumming out actually, and oh, I was bumming out, but I was also actually. So this is where the knack of business is. So my parents had this like these apartments, and I renovated one of them and converted that into an Airbnb.
Mhm.
So that so that was there. However, then 6 months go by, and I was able to find a job in Canada
Hmm.
while I was living in India. And then poof, so then this third kind of wave comes in.
Mhm.
So now I'm in Canada, kind of going through almost something similar to the US right at this point. But then now I knew I wasn't going to wait for change to come to me. And this is where the pandemic happened. This is where major transformation happened, and I'm happy to dig into it. But just to like stick on this thread for a second, then I started working it again. 3 years. I switched companies, started doing really well, and I started a side business slowly in 2023 last year, which was creating a digital product. I was like, let
Mhm.
me try it out. And right before launching it, November of 2023, 27th November of 2023, I get a call from my company saying that I was laid off.
Mm. So you almost get like it's like the kick in the pants, literally, from your company.
Yeah.
Hmm. Day before or 2 days before my birthday, 2023. So we're almost at like the
Oh.
1 year. And in that, I guess, do you remember what was it that you said yourself to yourself? Because since then, you've started your business, coaching people in the tech world, helping them avoid burnout. What was it that you said that you're like, you know what, this is what I'm like? What caused it? Did you just like you got kicked out, and then you're
Mhm.
like, hey, I'm gonna build something for myself, or was there anything else?
So the way it started, it was very traumatic. And since 2020, one of the things I've been doing is I have a piece of paper, and I write my goals. And I have this like a default state of like what I want the end of the year
Hmm.
to look like. It's a visualization technique in a way. And for 2023, one of the things I put down was by the end of the year. So it's so wild how things work out in life, because one of the things I put down was I want to be moving away from a 9 to 5, but I completely forgot about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I got laid off, it was traumatic. Coped through it, and within that first week, I found that paper. And then the moment I saw this, I was like, "Fuck this! I asked for this."
Right.
And that was that. Like, okay, we're going all in.
Yeah, there's a sense of, I mean, anyone watching, one, like, comment, but this important of setting yourself reminders, even if you forget about them, because it's almost like in the act or in this ritual of setting the reminder, you're at least putting it out there. I mean, you're unaware that you put a video saying, I'm only going to do this for 2 years. Yes, it took 7, but you at least held in your mind that you want to get into business. You write these
Mm-hmm.
goals in 2020 for the end of 2023 saying, hey, I'll be out of my 9 to 5. You forgot it, but it's still happening. Sometimes it's just the intention of setting the intention, right? So, one,
Mm-hmm.
congrats. Two, you get into business. What made you like why the message around curing burnout for you?
Mm. Because it was me.
Hmm.
It was me. It was. It was who I became in 2020, right? So that 2019, before I came to Canada, after I left that job, the 3 month job, I kind of went through the lowest point in my life.
Hmm.
So when I came to Canada, that was like a good reset. It's like my third reset in a way. And the pandemic happened, right? And I was like right in the midst of it. And for the first time, I was alone in my life, like properly. I was like new country, new job, new everything, right? And I had to stop. It was a little bit of a dark thought. It was like
Hmm.
if I died, especially in the pandemic, right? If I died, it would take some time for people to find out.
Hmm.
But it was liberating. And all of a sudden, it just like I started to realize I didn't realize I was depressed. I knew something was up. I was unhappy. I hated myself. And my career success was going really good, and I had the accolades, I had the referrals, right? I mean, you don't get like, and I just want to say that you don't get a job offer living in India into Canada, like,
Hmm.
because there's immigrants here that are looking for jobs, right?
Right.
So I had the career um, stature, right? But I was deeply miserable, and that is where like that journey began because like I was burnt out,
Hmm.
I was depressed. I didn't know it at the time, but I was. And I knew something had to be done.
I think a lot of times too, when we create businesses, it's always something that we've not always, but for the most part, it's something that we've struggled with ourselves, right?
Mhm.
Because it's this remembering that we have all the time of like, oh my gosh, I got stuck in this, and then this remembering, it's such an intense feeling that we want to spread that message and you want to help other people. So you get into burnout that way. And I remember working with you in Business Accelerator and starting with burnout, starting with mental health, and like something that I'll tell most people when they build their business is your offer will evolve, right? As you find your voice, as you find the people that are drawn to your voice, it's going to make some changes. And with you, the big one was a shift in bringing AI into it. Where in your
Mm.
journey were you like, oh, I'm onto something if I add AI? Like, how did AI come into this business journey for you?
Mm. Oh, yeah, that's a great question. And I just want to touch on that the initial experience too, right? Of coming on board. Because one of the amazing things that I did, Dylan, was I learned the art of surrendering.
Hmm.
And I learned it earlier this year. And I told myself for 3 months minimum that I will surrender to this process. And because when I, as you mentioned, like as I, when I came to you with the offer and stuff, you helped guide some of the initial, I mean, a lot of it actually. I don't, you helped guide my outcome in a way. I
Mm-hmm.
was trying to explain this to you, and you helped like guide it in that way. And that was so crucial for me to just like, hey, like getting from the course, like, okay, this is what you need, okay, and just running with it. And then, as you said beautifully, is eventually, right, as I started moving to the market, learning from my network, I was like, oh, okay, this had to evolve, right? And the evolution of AI is, so my modality is healing, right? So I help people come out of burnout, to beat burnout through this career authenticity. And how that's done is through healing.
Hmm.
Like healing is the modality. And AI, okay, like, dude, we can have like a 3 hour podcast on AI itself. So, what do I say about AI, dude? Like, our lives are fundamentally going to be different.
Hmm.
The things we do, the jobs we do, every fucking thing is going to change.
Mm-hmm.
When OpenAI started, they had, if I'm not mistaken, 1 million signups in less than a week.
Yeah, it was wild time.
Are It's wild from a tech adoption perspective. That is wild. And just today, I read this thing where they are launching their next model of ChatGPT,
Hmm.
which is codenamed like Orion or something, and they're releasing it in December, which is supposed to be 100 times more powerful than ChatGPT 4, which is the current version of it. So our technological advances are going exponential, like Moore's law, right? So we're going to get to a point. At first, I was like by 2030, but at this rate, it's happening even sooner,
Mm-hmm.
where AI is going to do the things that we don't want to do. Another quick snippet is we saw the We Robot event by Elon Musk that gives us a glimpse into what the future holds as well. It's pretty funny that it resembled the iRobot movie from
Yeah.
way back when. But this gives us a glimpse. For anyone listening, it gives us a glimpse that we are not going to be doing the things we don't want to do. And because of that, then now this question opens. There's a lot of fear, obviously, around it. It's like, okay, what are we going to do? And because currently the way we work, most of us, the corporate world is, oh, there's a job, there's an opening, there's money there, and I'm gonna go towards it. But if AI is doing these things, then the question becomes, what do you want to do?
And I think also before, if you don't mind me coming in, then because everyone will hear this AI stuff. And like there's some people that are excited. They're like, oh my gosh, yes, advancement, we're growing. And there's other people that probably just heard that last minute, 2 minutes, and they're like, oh fuck. Like their stomach starts to spin a little bit. How, for the collective whole, from what you know, how do we prepare for something like AI?
Yeah. And for those people, you absolutely should.
Mm-hmm.
You should feel that way. You should feel that pit in the stomach, like, oh fuck.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know why? It's good that you're feeling it now
Mm-hmm.
and not 10 years from now. Here's the ironic thing and the paradoxical thing about prepping for AI is it has nothing to do with AI.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how I've prepped for AI and continue to. Four things. It comes down to four things. One is mastering yourself, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, setting healthy boundaries, and number four is taking empowered action, which could also mean breaking the boundaries from number three. So that's also a paradox in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And in learning how to do these four, the character skills that you will learn, the human skills that you will learn, is what you're going to need to adapt towards for AI. Because let's face it, right now, we don't quite have an idea of how AI is transforming things. There's a few use cases that's coming out, right? Obviously, we see it in healthcare. We can see it, in if you have like an issue, you just kind of type in a chat GPT. It's doing automated tasks, all that good stuff. But we're still like, this is like 92, 93 of like the internet.
Mm-hmm.
We're still so early in the AI scene that the you need the human skills to be able to be resilient enough, right? Like to that person you were referring to, Dylan. It's like, oh my god, I feel that pit. Well, with these skills, you're able to be adaptable, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a new tool coming in. You're like, oh, okay, let me curiously explore this, as opposed to, oh my god, like I can't, I can't, I'm done for.
Yeah, let me make sure I'm hearing this properly because it's an interesting way of looking at it. Because I always come back to awareness and so, like, you don't know what
Mm-hmm.
you can do until you have awareness of who you are. And I think a lot of people skip that first step of self awareness practices, whether it's through meditation, visualization, reading. I mean, people have different practices, running, being with yourself and knowing yourself. You're saying that that also begets anything that you do with AI, because AI being a tool to help you, well, before you use it, the reason we could go to AI and be like, well, this is confusing, I don't know how to use this, what you're really saying is holding that mirror up and saying, well, you don't know yourself. If you were to go through these four steps, mastering yourself, knowing your strengths and weaknesses, setting proper boundaries, what was the fourth one again?
Taking empowered action.
Taking empowered action. So for instance, me as a creative, knowing that I love coming up with ideas. It's a strength of mine. I can sit in imagination and think of worlds. Might mean I don't need help with it. But knowing my challenges, organization, getting that next step, putting myself out there. I know that weakness that means I know how to use AI. I'm going to go into this Claude 3.5 or I'm going to go into ChatGPT 487, whatever the hell we want to call it now, and I'm going to know what to ask it for. Because for some people, let's say their weaknesses is more creative ideas. They can use Claude 3.5 as a sounding board to say, hey, I'm thinking this, poke holes, or give me a couple of, prompts back. And then from that, they can kind of pick and elaborate on it. That might not be my thing. I'm going to use Claude 3.5 to really help with my challenges. Coming back to what you said, doing what I don't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Oh my God, yes. And
Cool.
See, even as part of this
I got it. I
conversation,
figured out
right?
ChatGPT. Thank you so much, Elton. No.
Wonderful conversation.
Great. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah. As part of this conversation, like this is live demonstration, ladies and gentlemen. Dylan just mentioned Cloud 3.5. I haven't heard of it, and I wrote it down.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I'm like, oh, okay, let me check it out.
Yeah.
Right? My curiosity is now taking me towards that, and so beautifully well put, right? Because like, and I know you too. So you're a creative. You have, and I'm curious too, like about your, like kind of like your direction here too. How did like how have you thought about AI in a way? Because like you do comic books and all that stuff too in your downtime.
You're the second, third person I've had on the podcast now, and our number one core value with LEADR is radical transparency. To bring it up, and I am still. Have I used it? For sure. Have I checked out Dolly, Midjourney? Yes. Have I used ChatGPT? Yes. Am I getting into Claude? Claude, like CLAUDE, like the name
Mm-hmm,
Claude
mm-hmm,
3.5. Have I used it? Yes. There is a huge part of me that is like I want my mastery to come from myself. I work with an illustrator that absolutely hates Midjourney AI and what it's doing for like the illustrative world.
mm-hmm.
And I respect the hell out of him and what he does. And with it, I think what rubs off on me is, oh, I don't really need this. That being said, we will use Claude 3.5 to help us think of certain dialogue in our book. We have a main antagonist we're working on right now for our comics that will also come out in our animated series. We're working with a screenwriter right now. And we want to get his personality down where he's rallying people. And what would he say as someone that wants to rally the people, but at the heart isn't the greatest guy, has his flaws? It's not something that I would do, right? If I know my weaknesses, it's hard for me to step into those shoes of evil when it's not something I flex often. So we're like, who could we represent this off of? And what we did is we put a couple of prompts, a couple of one-liners we wanted him to say, but we mixed it with talks from Mussolini and Hitler early in their reign, where they were actually trying to get the loyalty of the people before they got really radical. So we'll throw things like that into it here and there, but for the most part, hearing what you said helped me a little bit with how I could use AI, because I don't want to use AI for creative thoughts. I want to use AI to keep me organized and maybe fill in between the lines of my creative thoughts. But yeah, man,
Wow.
minimal.
Yeah. No. And wow. That's like thanks for sharing that too, because it's then there's a conversation around creativity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a beautiful element here, which is AI can do the painting, right?
Mm-hmm.
AI can do the painting. AI can do a Mona Lisa painting, and probably even better. But as humans, I know, like for me, I would still gravitate towards the Mona Lisa because of the story, and like, there's something about me, even let's say like purchasing a painting, me purchasing a painting that a human made,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that beautiful connection, this goes to connect, like that connection isn't going away, and I do feel like like you are on that right track in terms of like, hey, like I have my creativity, like it's a collection of who I am as a person, and when you go to these tools like AI, it just helps navigate things like the conversation with Mussolini and Hitler. Like, wow, right? Like the
Mm-hmm.
AI has that data, and as it becomes like more and more conscious, you'll be able to have a beautiful conversation
Mm-hmm.
and bring things from the past that we haven't been able to, and infuse that in your creativity. And how magical is that?
Yeah, and what I've learned from the screenwriter that I'm working with right now, he's like, I use it. I don't take anything it gives me, but it might give me 10 things. 8 of them suck, and I'm gonna double down on 2 of them, but I'm gonna elaborate in
Mhm,
my own way. Because one of the last couple of questions. I have two before we get to the uncomfort zone, if that's okay. From what
mhm,
I know about you, man, spiritual person working with me through Business Accelerator. Even talking now, meditation is a pretty consistent practice for you. AI feels such like this automation, right? Like a robot in a sense. How do you balance this spiritual experience or the spiritual life that you live with the automation of AI?
mhm. So I had my first awakening when I was in the fourth grade.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was, right? But I was just aware. I was like, oh, like the first stage, right? So, like the best example I give is my mom. Like I started doing my own homework without my mom asking me to, or her like scolding me
Weirdo.
to
No, I'm
do it or
kidding.
something. Yeah. And I love it. I love it. I'm weird. And my mom would like boast like to her friends, and she's like, oh, he just kind of does his own homework. Like I don't have to worry about it, right? So it's like I knew what I needed to do, right? Um so that's the first thing, and then the first place. And then my second awakening happened this year in March. I went to like a meditation retreat. It was like this 10-day silent meditation retreat. So I don't even talk. I love talking. So like for 10 days, I didn't like, barely said anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge, huge transformational shift. And then now I'm in, actually, I mentioned, like, before we start recording, is I'm in this like synchronicity space
Mm-hmm.
now, where this podcast is having such a timely uh, time, in a way, where I'm going through my third awakening in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you mentioned, very spiritual,
Mm-hmm.
and that we are connected, and there's a connection to source, God, right? Like everyone has a universal consciousness, and that's one connection. And then each one of us has it. So when
Mm-hmm.
we're in a conversation together, we might lose track of time. We might talk about some interesting things, right? And like that is also a connection, right? Because we both have it. Everyone has it. A lot of people obviously have forgotten, and it's the people that do remember. They have an obligation in a way, including myself, to awaken these people, or try to at least.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say like spirituality is very like deep, and it's a foundational thing. It's the like the cliche. I know I say cliches, but it's because it's mostly true, right?
Mm-hmm.
That um, I am a spiritual being living a human experience.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like the more we can remind ourselves that, and then part of the human experience is the evolution of what we're doing as a society. Part of that being artificial intelligence and how it can help make our life a little bit more efficient.
Mm,
It really does. What I'm hearing is coming back to the biggest two takeaways I'm having from this is setting consistent reminders for yourself daily to yourself, and then putting intentions out there, whether you remember them or not, because you'll end up coming back to them. Last
mm,
question on just your business, right? Who is it, in a nutshell, that tends to come to you to have you help them um,
mm.
lean
Yeah,
into
yeah, yeah.
reduce burnout, live more efficiently?
Yeah. So I've seen people like, as of now, like a lot more tech professionals,
Mm-hmm.
but it's mostly anyone. I would say like it comes in twofold. One is the people that have prescribed to the way society's told us to live, right? Like get the degree, get the job, get the money, get the house, get all that. But it's like the more they take those steps, the more miserable they feel within, and they're looking for a
Mm-hmm.
new way of doing things. So
Mm-hmm.
that's one. And then the second piece is like the younger people that are misdirected. They don't know where to go. There's so much noise on what it means to live a good life, a meaningful life, and
Mm.
they are also interested.
And how do they find you? Like, what's the best places for your what we would call top of funnel?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So LinkedIn
Okay.
and TikTok.
LinkedIn, TikTok. And for anyone watching, we'll put the links below. I think the fun part about you, Elton, is that you're relatable. You know what I mean? It's like you're willing to talk about these challenges. You're like, hey, I went through them myself. This is how I got through them. And there's a lot of times when I want to learn presence, it's like if I were to work with someone like an Eckhart Tolle, the whole time I'm going to be thinking, yeah, this is something that you can do, Eckhart. Like, because he's so far in this
Hmm.
process, it's like there feels like this huge gap where I want to understand someone that's like, oh yeah, I get it because you're relatable. You're putting yourself out there. And that being said, the last three questions, I don't want to say rapid fire, but as we get towards the end here, call it the uncomfort zone. You ready to enter the uncomfort zone, Elton?
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go. Let's dive.
Uh,
Let's dive in.
First one is that you got outside your comfort zone, right?
Hmm.
You're consistently putting TikToks out there at first to the void, right? As you get this, you know, people obviously that you know, but as you gain your following, it's like you're consistently putting yourself in the uncomfort zone to talk about something that you're passionate about. Why did you decide to get outside of your comfort zone to pursue this?
I did though. You know,
Mm,
I got outside my comfort zone because I was killing myself.
mm,
Um, I knew in 2020 the life that I was going down was the wrong path, and I would have killed myself. Like not from like a suicidal perspective, but just like from a like the life I was leading, right? I was like high cholesterol. I was like smoking cannabis every day, and I just needed to come out of that hole first, right?
mm.
And then,
So it's almost that things get so tough for you that you're like, hey, enough is enough. Which somewhat leads me to my next question is some people get to that and then they don't. So I do want us to take our like ego caps off or put it on, whatever the hell we want. I don't care if our ego talks here. Why do you feel most people don't get outside their comfort zone? Even, I'm going to challenge it, even if they get to a point where they're like, I'm figuratively and literally killing myself right now. Why do you think
mm,
people don't get outside their comfort zone?
autopilot, right? So taking the conversation, I mentioned how I created that video when I first started working, like, hey, I'll be in this for like 2 years, 1, 2 years.
All right.
I ended up doing it for 7 years. Yes, there were things, right? I had to get my immigration sorted and all that, and it's valid.
Mm-hmm.
It's valid. But there are excuses
Mm-hmm.
for me not doing what I wanted to do. And I was on autopilot. Everything was okay. It's normal.
All right, man. So
And
this
yeah.
leads my last question, because I hear you, right? It's always fun asking these questions because I get such different answers, and they all make sense. But for that, the last question, right? What would your advice to be to someone who could be watching this and you're like, I am living on autopilot? What's your advice for someone to help them get out of their comfort zone and pursue what they're passionate about?
Yeah, oof. That's a wonderful question. And for anyone in that place, please listen. And as we're wrapping up, I'd love to finish off with a story here too. So, in 2020, I as I was like beginning this, like, okay, I gotta move forward, whatever that means. I recorded another video, and it was when I was high. I was wearing a banyan. So a banyan is a wife beater. Oh,
Okay.
but by the way, I don't know why it's called wife beater, and maybe that's why I stopped
Maybe we
wearing
should
them.
start calling them Benions. That's why we start calling them Benions.
Yes,
All
Yes.
right, you're high, you're wearing a
Yeah.
banging.
Yep. Yeah. And I recorded this video, and it was just saying, hey, your career confidence might be high, but internally you feel so low, you're so depressed, you're so miserable. I commend you for going on this journey. Thank you. I know things are gonna. I know when you're watching this video, things are going amazing. And Dylan, when I tell you, firstly that video is recorded, but it's a snapshot in my memory that I will go because now it's like 4 years ago. Now I will go through my day sometimes, and I will think back to that particular video. I'm like, wow, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for going and doing the work. Thank you for taking that first step. So coming back, right? So for the people that are in that place, take the fucking leap. Take it. What if I told you that once you did, that would be the best decision of your life you ever made?
Mm. Elton, man, thank you so much for today. I really liked it. I always take a plethora of notes if anyone's ever curious why I'm looking down. If you like this, first and foremost, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe. These come out almost every week. If you have any questions for myself or for Elton, put it down in the comments below. If you want to learn more about Elton, there's also links in the description below. But the biggest thing that I'm taking here, we're talking about leading voice, having a vision and keeping it in front of you. Like I already said, the two biggest takeaways I took is consistently reminding yourself, keeping your vision in front of you, consistently reminding yourself what it is that you care about, and then setting intentions for the future through some portal that you can see again. Whether it's writing yourself a note and keeping it in your office, and maybe you look back at it, 2-3 years down the line, literally filming videos for yourself that you can come back to. It's like that power and that act alone. Like if you're watching this and you're looking to get outside your comfort zone, go film a video to yourself in the future right after this. You also helped me clarify a little bit on the AI standpoint as well. I love the fact that before anyone goes into AI, they need to master themselves. Then after that, they need to know their strengths and weaknesses. Then after that, they need to set proper boundaries. And then after that, it's taking extreme action, right? Is that what you said? Extreme?
Empowered.
Empowered. Taking, I
Empowered.
like
Yeah,
that better. Taking empowered action, because then when you go into AI, you actually know how to use it properly, because this wave's coming. But if you know yourself, you know how AI is going to work with you in particular. It's not just something that you try if we get frustrated, because we don't know ourselves and what we need. And people that are getting burnt out doing everything, AI can be a tool for them to live a little bit more efficiently, a little bit more at ease, so they don't burn out in what they do. And if you want to learn more from Elton, feel free to check out his TikToks, his LinkedIn, links below. Elton Silvi, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. I really appreciate it.
thank you, Dylan, and like, thank you for giving me the space. Thank you to the leader community as well. Um,
Oh, man, not a problem. And if you're watching, we will see you next week on a Matter of Speaking podcast. Have a great one.